Ladies and gentlemen, I think Cyril's had one of those FML days. Those FML days? Yes, he must really be going to bed tonight and thinking, like, what the hell am I doing all this rubbish for? I'm a billionaire. I could be like knee deep in bikini babes off the coast of Ibiza. Instead, I'm having to deal with this rubbish. Anyway, before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Join the channel. Come on, guys, help me out. This boosts those numbers. Anyway, let's get on to the video of today. And the first part of the video is actually around the NHI. That old chestnut. You see, the decision to sign the NHI into law has been called into question, specifically why Cyril signed the NHI into law. Now, the ANC's answer to this is, well, because it was passed by the previous administration and it was Cyril's obligation to sign the legislation, putting it into, law. But you see, according to an argument made to the Gauteng High Court, Cyril actually had different imperatives. What he should have actually done is actually notice that there were various things contained within the warning information given to him before signing the actual act into law, specifically around the unconstitutionality of various elements of it, the unaffordability of the act, and the impractical nature of the act itself, all of which had been warned to Cyril prior to the bill actually reaching his desk. Now, this is true. There were various individuals that warned that the act itself wasn't actually constitutional. Many of them argued that the actual act itself would be prone to constitutional challenge. Now, that constitutional scrutiny of the act meant that actually if Cyril had adopted his proper obligation, he would have sent it back to Parliament for redrafting. But he didn't. And so the actual judge in this case has called into question why Cyril rushed the signing of it. And the rationality behind signing it needs to be understood according to the relevant judge, because the argument is that the actual signature or the signing of the law into effect was potentially a political ploy, which we've been saying on this channel for 2 years. It was clearly a political ploy. It was a political ploy designed, in the ANC's mind, to get them more votes coming up to the election, but didn't work. And now Cyril's got to explain why he didn't actually follow the actual processes he should have followed and sent the act back for, redrafting and reconsideration. Now, the government originally said that they weren't going to do this because Cyril could do what he wants. And unfortunately, the Gauteng High Court says, not so fast. Actually, you need to explain this. So let's all wait for the notes that we all know will magically never appear. And again, that's that decision for today. Now, before we get on to the next headache of Cyril Ramaphosa, let's actually talk about some good news. That is, for those of you who don't know, the Houthis have been giving the United States a lot of headaches. Basically, they've been blocking a popular shipping route, and they've been bombing the hell out of them. And in retaliation, the United States has been, bombing the hell out of them. Now, this all meant that it was the Houthis versus the US in a game of bombing. And I don't know about you guys, my money was in the US. In any case, this is what Donald Trump had to say about the entire scenario.
And we had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that, and we will stop the bombings.
So it would appear that based on Trump's statement, the conflict with the Houthis is no more. They bombed them into a peacemaking deal. Who knew? Bombing sometimes works. Anyway, talking of what else is actually bombed, and this was actually the DA's court case against the South African government, specifically in line with the Citizenship Act 88 of 1995. Now, for those of you who actually want to know what that is, that Act of Parliament basically said that you needed a letter from the minister in order to keep your South African citizenship. And if you hadn't got this letter and you had moved abroad and got dual nationality, you had effectively lost your citizenship. And I myself know of a number of individuals that have had to spend, some very lengthy sums of money, some very vast sums of money, in order to get their citizenship restated. These are individuals that when they want to come back to South Africa find that, well, magically, they no longer have their citizenship. Now, many individuals have actually asked the question, and that is, how do you lose citizenship to a country that you were born in? And the actual legal answer is, well, you can't. You see, so usually when you come back, you have to spend a serious amount of money and a lot of paperwork, and then you can eventually apply to get your citizenship back. But the question is, how could you lose it in the first place? And this has been a question on many individuals' minds for some time. Well, according to the court case, which the DA brought 10 years ago, to actually get the act itself and the constitutionality of the act reviewed, well, the DA won. And what this effectively means is that the Constitutional Court today now says that actually you can't lose your citizenship. And this whole retention of citizenship letter malark was, well, a load of rubbish. And the entire process that you'd be made to follow was a load of rubbish. Now, this begs the relevant question, which is, if you paid a serious amount of money to get your citizenship back, can you get compensation? Can you be refunded? And if you can, I'm sure there's some lovely lawyers out there that will take up the opportunity at helping you get your cash back. Anyway, it's not my area of expertise, but it will be someone's. Now, talking of what other headaches the DA have been causing today, well, for those of you who don't know, the DA was in court, basically because of the Employment Equity Act Amendment Bill, which the DA is challenging, on the basis that the hiring criteria, the race-related aspects of it, the quotas, if you will, are unconstitutional, because it effectively amounts to race-based legislation that is, well, racist. Now, according to the DA, the awarding of jobs should be based on merit and not race. According to the DA, they committed to doing everything they can to build a country where everybody has the opportunity to shape the future on the basis of their ability and their hard work, not based on the color of their skin. Martin Luther idea. In any case, the DA says we don't want to have a country that continues to define everybody by their race and other biological attributes that they don't have control over. And this is obviously a prelude or a precursor to the idea that white males specifically are deemed to be, well, the worst known human beings in South African history, which means that they're in the bottom of the pecking list for, well, pretty much everything. Now, according to Helen Zille, these type of race-based quotas are dehumanizing and unjust, and they reduce people themselves to nothing more than statistics. They ignore talent, they ignore effort. And to be frank, she says that actually doing away with some of this legislation would help South Africans have a fairer shot at a better life in South Africa. To which anybody with a brain cell goes, yeah, 100% agree with that. But you see, the problem is that, as the DA highlights, what the ANC tends to forget about acts such as these is that effectively they do drive away investment and they do increase unemployment. Companies and potential investors have basically often said that these forms of social engineering laws become a major barrier to investment and growth. And so rather than actually empower economically marginalized individuals, it actually marginalizes more individuals and actually creates greater disempowerment from an economic perspective. Now, the one individual that really doesn't like the entire challenge being made by the DA as well, the Employment and Labour Minister, who says that they were disappointed by the DA's challenge. And now, if you actually understand that this is the minister who's been granted all the powers, so effectively it's the DA saying, you've got too much power, you shouldn't really have it, it's not really yours to have, because what you're doing is taking race-based laws and putting some arbitrary targets, just slapping it on it, and just going, yeah, those will do. And you're saying, trust me, bro, I know what I'm doing because I said so. And that's actually exactly what they're doing. And this specific minister says, yeah, well, doesn't see anything wrong with that. And yeah, I'm sure you don't. Now, according to the ANC and the specific minister, you see, the DA, what they're actually trying to do here is they're trying to disrupt the achievement of an equitable representative society. And instead, what they're actually attempting to do is maintain the the status quo, bring back apartheid or something, because that's always the, stooge response that you get. And apparently what the DA is actually doing here is they're actively sabotaging the transformation goals that have been pursued since the end of apartheid. And what they're actually going to do is they're actually going to hinder progress towards equality and fairness in the workplace. And that this form of anti-transformational stance will actually take back work-based equality and fairness. And to that, I have to say, nice words, bro. They don't actually mean anything, because you can't have equality and fairness in the workplace if you don't have a workplace. Now, you see, this type of legislation destroys jobs and it destroys investment. That's the DA's point. It's all good and fine to talk about equality and fairness in the workplace, but you actually have to have a workplace in order to have that. And this type of legislation means you ain't going to have a workplace. You can have all the nice equality and fairness as you want in the unemployment line, but that's not what people want. And to that degree, anybody with a brain cell would say, yeah, DA's probably correct on this front. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the roundup of the news for today. Diaz had a good day. Cyril had a day full of headaches. Anyway, those are just my opinions. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.